All right, the one and only John Stugotz Weiner joins me now. Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz. It's a pleasure to have him on. He's a busy man. John, Steven Strom here. Thank you very much for joining me today. How's everything going?
Everything's going well, man. I'm not that busy. I give the appearance that I'm a lot busier than I actually am, just to show off, interviews like this one. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. You know what? You know what's happened with I'm not that busy, but what's happened is I feel like people are starting to look back at my career, and I don't feel like I'm nearly done yet. And so I'm starting to do like career retrospects, right?
Okay.
It's like, and so I enjoy doing them. Don't get me wrong, and I enjoy giving advice to people who want to get into this industry. But I'm starting to feel old, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you.
Fair enough. Well, listen, we'll do a mixed bag. We'll do some career stuff. We'll do your career. We'll do just some media stuff as well, because everything is kind of changing here. So let's first start with your journey from New York to South Florida. We were talking a little bit earlier. I thought you were in finance. You had just told me that you were bartending after college. What was, I guess, the moment where you said, screw this, I'm going all in on this radio career? And what happened following that decision?
So I eventually did get to finance. Like I eventually got there. It was down here in South Florida. I got to finance because I was thinking perhaps the media career was not going to work out, right? So you have to have a plan B.
Sure.
And we could discuss that further. In terms of like a seminal moment where I kind of knew, like, hey, this is what I wanted to do for a living. And I've told this story before. It's, where I grew up in New York, they had the first 24-hour sports radio station. It was WFAN in New York, 660 on the AM dial. I don't know why I have to say it like that, but I do. I think they're all FM now. But I was listening. So my dad had picked me up from practice, and he was driving me home, lacrosse practice. And I think it was the first time I had heard Mike and the Mad Dog. And I'm like, holy shit, these guys sound exactly like I sound. They're talking about sports the way me and my friends talk about sports, the way me and my dad talk about sports, the way me and my brother talked about sports. It wasn't two athletes. It wasn't guys who played the game. It was two idiots, and I can say that now because I become somewhat friendly with Russo, and no one's really friends with Francesa. So, but again, I was listening to the two guys, and I remember asking my dad, I said, Dad, what is this? He said, it's a 24-hour sports radio station, which appealed to me because I love sports. And I said, they just talk about New York sports? He said, yeah, 24/7. I said, who are these two guys in particular? And he said, Chris Russo and Mike Francesa, Mike and the Mad Dog. And I said, they're great. Like, they sound awesome together. And they did. To me, it was, and it still is, the industry standard in terms of
100%.
Doing a sports radio show. They're like, everything matched up perfectly. You had you had Russo, the insane guy. You had Francesa, very reserved and form. Russo just letting it fly. And Francesa, you felt like you had some information and sources behind him. It feels like our show a little bit. And so, I asked my dad right then and there, I said, are these guys getting paid for this? And he said, yeah, they're probably getting paid a lot. Yeah, to do this. And so, my dad got out of the car. We pulled into the driveway, and I said, Dad, leave the car on. And I sat in the driveway and I listened for like another 20 minutes. And once I realized that they were talking about sports, they were doing it the way me and my friends were doing it. They were getting paid a lot of money to do it. And suddenly there were sports radio stations popping up.
Yeah.
I decided right then and there, I wasn't shy. I love sports. I decided right then and there in high school, Dad, this is what I want to do for a living. And my dad said, go for it. And so pretty much from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to try it, knowing there are no guarantees getting into the business. I knew how difficult it was to get into the business, but I at least wanted to try it. I pursued it relentlessly. And here we are,
So similar. So I grew up in New Jersey. So we both, it was full circle because it's the same story, right? Me and my dad were in the car. He used to put it on. Yes. He used to put it on, 66 AM, 101.9 FM.
Yeah.
And I was like, what, who are these guys? Like, this is awesome. Blah, blah, blah. I ended up interning for Chris when I was 20, which was just an awesome moment for my dad too. But my question for you, because we both have
how old are you, Stephen? How old are you?
24.
Okay, so I want you to think about this and think how long they've been doing this and how many people they've impacted, all right? Because I am 49, dude, okay? We're separated. You said 24. We're separated by 25 years, I think, if my math is correct. I'm not a math major. You were influenced by the same two idiots I was influenced by.
It's crazy. It's crazy. The impact is wild. But It's just funny to hear, it's your dad and it's my dad too. What is it about local sports radio that kind of brings a father and son together? Why do we bond off of that for father and son?
It's interesting because we have these arguments at our dinner table. We have these arguments. We compare generations with our dad. My dad thinks Oscar Robertson is the best basketball player he's ever played. I think Michael Jordan is, and my dad refuses to put Steph Curry in his top 10, anywhere near his top 10, right? Like there's no room for Steph Curry.
Yep.
4 championships, 2 MVPs, a finals MVP, no room for Steph. Okay. We like having these conversations. We like having these arguments in a way that feels like, okay, we can both be right. We can both be wrong. We're going to laugh at each other at the end of the day, because what the beauty between Mike and Chris was, Mike was laughing at Chris. I mean, he was, but in a way that was respectful. Like they knew they were doing a good show, and he knew he needed Chris's viewpoint and Chris's craziness in order for him to be more entertaining and succeed. And so I think what drew me to local sports, it's the teams that you love, right? And especially if you have a good show in your market, that they're going to hone in and talk about the things that you want them to talk about in a way that you and your friends discuss them, whether it's, in my case, the Mets or the Jets or the Yankees or whatever's going on in the world of sports. And of course, there were stories that transcended the local market. There always is, that are appealing to every market, right? More macro type conversations. But I just think, talking about the teams that you love in a way that you talk about it with your friends or with your dad is really what draws us to local sports radio. I never really wanted to do national. I set out to do a local sports radio show, specifically in New York. That's not, easier said than done. It's hard to start out in market number one. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the draw of it. It's they're going to talk. It's like, listen, I can't speak to your experience at the time Mike and Chris were doing it. It was like 1 to 6:30. They were doing a
wild.
5.5. Yeah, wild. And like, I'm in school, and I'm telling you, after a big Mets game or a big Jets game, I made a point to get out to my car 1 o'clock. Now you listen, you're 24, you probably listen right on your phone.
Yeah.
I had to be in my car 1 o'clock just to listen to these two. And so that, to me, that's the draw. It's two guys who are talking about things that you care about in a way that you discuss them with your friends and your family. So,
what's funny now with First Take and Mad Dog coming on, people have, some younger people have just seen Mad Dog for the first time, because not a lot of people, I think my age, are subscribers to Sirius XM, because it's sad. I mean, like, I still down here, I still listen to AM 940 Wins, 790 The Tick. I mean, I'm old school.
Yeah.
But people think that Chris is emulating Stephen A. And it's like, no, Chris is one of one. Like, it's so funny to me. They're like, oh, this guy's trying to be like Stephen A. It's like, no, do you understand? This guy, Chris Russo, was Chris Russo before Stephen A. Smith.
I think Stephen A. would tell you he's trying to be Chris Russo, if anything. I mean, Stephen A. stands out, by himself. He's one of a kind. He's amazing. I love him. He's fantastic. But we all gained a little, we all learned a little something from Mike and Chris and their style and how to do it. And Stephen A. is no different than that. What we decided with our show was to make it a little bit more lighthearted, but the building blocks of Mike and Chris are there, with Dan kind of having that Francesa role and all the credibility and everything that comes with that, and me having the Russo role that just let it fly, And so I think their chemistry was so good, but we all have a little, what Chris is doing now is just sharing Chris, what we've heard our entire lives with the rest of the country. I mean, that's it. If you have never heard Chris Russo, then of course you would think what it is that you just described, that he's emulating Stephen A. Smith. No, it's the other way around. We're all emulating that. Every single show in some way, shape, or form has been impacted by that show. And the reason I know that ours has is Dan really, especially early on, always trusted me with, how do we do this show? What's the right way to do this show? And because I only knew one show, I just incorporated some Mike and Chris. So at some level, we're all kind of stealing a little bit from them, and because it worked and it was so successful, and we all owe them a lot, because they really, they set the market for what it is that radio hosts could potentially get paid if they were to do a good show. But Chris Russo has been doing it. I hear Russo doing some stuff on First Take where I'm like, I've heard him give my take 1,000 times.
The Bob Cousy stuff.
Oh, the Honda, the Havlicek, Stephen A. What are you doing? I mean, we've heard it for our entire lives, so it's not a shock to us. But I can understand if you're in the middle of Kansas and you don't know who Chris Russo is, and you have your television on, and you would think, he's trying to be Stephen A. No, It's the other way around.
Stugotz with us now. We're going to keep bouncing around. I guess, because I read something on here that you got a group to start up 790 The Ticket. Can you talk about that process? Did you do you still talk to these people? Do you still how did that come about where we're going to get together and we're going to buy a group down here? We're going to buy a station.
Okay. So just like I moved down here in 97 to South Florida from New York. Now I moved down here not to take any sort of radio job, not because I knew I was going to get into radio. I knew it was something I wanted to do. But at the time, to be honest with you, I had just graduated college. My roommate in college was from South Florida. And I was bartending on the Upper West Side of New York City and, living with some friends just out of college. But also, still with that dream in mind of trying to get into broadcasting.
Sure.
I simply came down here and visited a friend for a weekend. And I was like, holy shit, this place is awesome. Like I'm not a big city guy. I don't love New York City. I love New York. I got family there. I got my brothers there. My friends are still there. And I was just there, actually, as a matter of fact. So I still love it. It's home to me. But I'm not a huge city guy. And so I came down here. We had a blast one weekend. And I'm like, okay, I could chill out. I could chill down here in Fort Lauderdale for a year or two and see where it takes me. And eventually I made that move. And so I came down here. I interned at WQAM. There was no 790 The Ticket at the time. And I interned for a guy named Hank Goldberg. And a couple of years went by and there was no job to offer me. And I got now I'm doing this simultaneously while working for the Dolphins and the Marlins. So I was down here, working in their ticket and sales office, 97 for the first Marlins World Series. And I met Boog Shambi, who got me, John Shambi, who now is the voice of the Cubs, but did Sunday Night Baseball forever. Was part of our lineup at 790 The Ticket for a while. I met him. He gave me an internship. And so I'm working for the Dolphins, Marlins. I'm interning at
You're
WQAM.
hustling.
I'm hustling. Yeah, I'm doing the hustle. But they didn't have a job for me. And so, and I interned on Hank's show. I interned on Boog's show. So 2 years go by, I didn't have a job. And I'm starting to think, I got to start making some money, like real money.
Like, how old are you at this time? 25, 24?
I would say 25, 26, somewhere in that range. Sure. And at the time, WQAM unfortunately did not have a job for me. So there's only so long you can intern for. So I took a job with the Knicks and the Rangers, and I went back to New York for a year. Wow, and I spent that, making good money. And you would think dream job, but it wasn't. Because I told you earlier what I wanted to get into. Right. Sure. Yeah. It was in sales. And but I enjoyed it. But I also spent the entire year, like I'm sitting in traffic trying to get 3 blocks, and it's taking me 45 minutes. And I'm like, what the fuck am I? And it's snowing. And I'm like, what the fuck did I come back here for in the first place? But then a funny thing happened about a year into it. I get a call from Josh Darrow, who was the program director at WQAM at the time. He was also the program director when I was interning there. And he said, hey, I got some exciting news for you. And I said, what? He said, Hank Goldberg's executive producers moved on. You made such an impression on Hank, he'd like to hire you to be the executive producer. And I was like, okay, that is exciting news. What's it pay? He goes, well, here's for the news that's not that exciting. And I'm like, what's it pay, dude? He's like $4.50 an hour. And I'm like, done. Like, that's how quick the go, because I knew this was my foot in the door.
You have to go through this part of it. It's the weeding out process kind of thing. Like, they're going to not pay, and then you got to get through. You're going to talk about it, but talk about the importance of that, because that's got to be really frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating for a lot of younger broadcasters that are excited to get into this industry. You get to the point of, I'm going to intern, I'm going to do it. It's like, what? $4.50? How am I supposed to do this?
So $4.50 an hour. And so I said, Josh, I'm going to take it, but just give me a minute. So I called my mom and dad. I've said this before. Without my dad and my mom giving me the financial flexibility to pursue my dream, there's no way I make it. There's just no way. Like, they gave me what you need most in this business is, unless you hit it big, just right off the bat, you need time. You need time, right? Mm-hmm. Because those jobs just don't, they didn't pay a lot when I was growing up. They pay more now. And they should, because they're important positions. And so I called Josh back, maybe I talked to my mom and dad. They were like, listen, we got you. Go do it. This is your foot in the door. This is what you wanted. And at the time, Hank, there was just this big feature in Sports Illustrated. Now, at the time, I don't even know if you know what that is. It was a weekly publication, a weekly magazine. You're shaking your head. Yes, but most people don't. Your age and younger, they usually don't. It would arrive at your door once a week. You would check out who's on the cover. It was a big deal. They did a whole spread on local sports radio, and they named like the 15 or 20 biggest shows in the country, and Hank was one of them. And so I knew to be an executive producer of a show like this was a major step for me. And so I moved back down here with a smile on my face, $4.50 an hour, didn't care. Took the job with Hank, and had I not taken that job, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. And so just to advance that conversation forward, and to answer your question here with 790, I arrived at a point as I'm producing Hank's show, I'm saying, you started to notice a couple of things. And I always really paid attention to the business side of the industry. You started to notice that sports radio had blown up in such a way that you were starting to see two stations in major markets, right? Like there was audience, and there was obviously an economy for two stations in a lot of markets. And so I'm just like, as that started to happen, I'm thinking to myself, hey, there's got to be a younger alternative down here, because QAM was very old, very white, a lot of, old school type stuff. And I'm like, there's got to be an opportunity for a younger, hipper sports radio station down here. But is there enough audience down here to keep two afloat? Is there enough business down here to keep two afloat? And so I started at least thinking about it, putting down the blueprint of what it would look like or feel like to me. And luckily, I had two friends who were currently doing something similar in Atlanta, Andrew Saltzman and Steak Shapiro with 790 The Zone, where they didn't own the station, but they leased the station. So they had what was called a 24-hour LMA. They control the programming, they control the station. They just never owned the station. And my dog, he's very excited. He loves this part of the story. And so what happened was, I just started putting a business plan together, and I found some guys who were pretty influential down here. One guy in particular, Joel Feinberg, who ended up being the owner of 790 when we put it together. But I found, him and three other guys. One had a PR background, one had a marketing background. We had and I had a radio background, and Joel was financing. And so we put together that group. I went to 790 AM, just so you know, at the time, Waxy they were brokering already. So it wasn't they didn't have a true format. You could buy blocks of time, right? Mm-hmm. And so with the help of Andrew and Steak showing me kind of how to do this, I negotiated all of the time. I didn't want 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I wanted 24 hours, 7 days a week. I spoke to their general manager, Dennis Collins, who's a great friend. And we negotiated a deal, at least in principle, to lease the station 24/7. We have control of it. Call it 790 The Ticket. It'd be a second sports radio station in Miami. And eventually we came to terms, and he agreed. And we put together what I thought was a tremendous lineup. And, we competed against WQAM. They made fun of us. They made fun of us until we beat them. And then they stopped making fun of us, not just in revenue, but in ratings as well. In fact, they called me and Dan Show. I'll never forget the GM. One of the first articles he did is they'll be out of business in a year. What Dan and Stugotz are doing over there is sissy boy radio, is exactly the way he put it. 20 years later, that station is still going. It's still a sports radio station. And that sissy boy radio show has turned into one of the biggest radio shows in the history of radio. And here's the best part. Because Hank was taking shots at me as well. I ended Hank's career. Dan and I ended Hank's, the ratings were so big for me and Dan after a couple of years. Hank was done. And then guys that I respected and loved, Jim Mandich, like he came on, he went against us. We put him out,
Unbelievable.
And God rest his soul. I love Jim. But we did, we had a good show and a good station and a good lineup. And so we, I would say inside of 2 years, we were outrating WQAM, and we were certainly right there in terms of revenue. And so everything I thought, hey, could this market sustain two sports radio stations, both with ratings and business financially? That was answered pretty quickly for me because clearly it was ready. And so that's a little story there with 790.
Unbelievable. Wow, so much there, great stuff. It's the thing that I took away from it is, obviously you need to have talent for broadcast, but you also have to have that hustle element. And in your case, you're hustling, doing different internships, but at the same time, you're also, you're hustling as far as making deals. I feel like nowadays you have a certain guy, a position at a radio station doing those things. You guys are hustling. There's still stuff on YouTube of you guys at Panther games. You guys are doing live remotes. Yep. Just talk a little bit about that. How much did that part of the I guess job help you get to this point?
I think knowing all aspects of the job has really helped me. It's helped me in terms with credibility within my own staff, being able to say that Dan's a columnist, like he didn't have any formal radio training. He was never an overnight board op. He wasn't interning. He wasn't grinding at $4.50 an hour, at least not in radio. So he never pushed the buttons. He never spliced reel to reel. He never did editing. He still hasn't done any of that. And he'll never have to do it. And God bless him. I had to. And that helps. It helps you teach. It helps you tell stories of, hey, that our producers come to me and say, hey, and we've had the, I had this early on. Hey, I'm only making X. And I'm like, yeah, well, I made $4.50 an hour, man. So I don't want to hear about it. Or, hey, this, the editing equipment isn't the best. And I can always fall back on, hey, try splicing reel to reel together. Let me know how that goes. All right. or try, put the little 8-track in, the little, because that's the thing.
But you are a jack of all trades, though, when you really kind of think about it. You're old school.
Yeah, I've done sales. The show's always leaned on me for the business side of this stuff, and the sales relationships and all that stuff. I think it's important to do all that stuff. It gives you a better understanding of what it is your team is going through at certain times of a show, some of the frustration, some of the highs, some of the lows, because you've been there and you've done it and you can relate to them. And relatability is not only with your staff, but with your audience is kind of what my whole career has been about. And so, those days were invaluable to me. Yep. Those experiences were invaluable to me. And they really kind of, helped me get to where it is, where I'm at today. And so, I'm just excited. Listen, it all worked out. There were times where I was worried it would not work out. I always had like a backup plan. I always had this, I had that in mind. There had to be a date where like a line of this saying like, hey, if I don't make it, I gotta go do something else. Because what I always had in the back of my head was I didn't want mom and dad to have to float me for too long. It's not fair to them.
Yep.
And plus, I wanted to make my own money. I wanted to do my own stuff. And so, but those days, all of those days, the climb, the producing climb up to my own show was probably the most invaluable experience that I've had.
100%. Stugotz with us. 2 more quick ones with him. Just a great spot. So here's the one. I mean, there's a couple of things that kind of worry me about this industry. One of them is almost the burnout factor. Yeah. And you've been doing this for a long time, but you're married, you have kids, you are a coach. How important do you think that was? I guess having this over the mountaintop view, there's been multiple people that have kind of just been career 100% and they miss out on having a family. They miss out on having kids. What has that brought you as far as balance to your career and your family?
It's helped a lot, just because you're right. A lot of people. One sec. Steven, it's helped a lot because I knew he was going to bark again. I fucking knew it. I knew it right there. Why don't you just reset it real quick, actually?
Yeah.
Reset just the very end of the question, just so I have it fresh in my mind.
Just the burnout factor in this industry, right?
Yeah, like having a family, having some things outside of this helped. I noticed it with Hank. Hank wasn't married. Not that he burned out. It was just, I remember this being everything that he had, right? And listen, it takes a toll on the family. I'll tell you, my family has lived through it. Like, I have 2 daughters who are now seniors in high school, headed to college. I have a wife. The nature of the role I play on our show, it's not easy. Like, they hear things they don't want to hear. They hear Dan yelling at me sometimes. They hear me yelling back. And sometimes you take it home. And I think when I, kind of learned and got old enough to say, hey, Dan and I are just doing a show. That's what it is. My mom would call me and she'd be like, oh, he's such an ass, right? And I'd be like, Mom, we're doing a show. Like, okay, I know this man. Like, we're doing a show. And I'm not to say Dan's not an ass occasionally. He is, but so am I. Okay. But that's the key to our longevity is like, we know our roles. We make fun of ourselves. We laugh at ourselves. But I think I think Dan would tell you the same thing. We have some interest outside of the radio show. So being able to, kind of go home, have way more important things to deal with once you get home, to kind of, even if you want to focus on this, you can't, because you got to focus on that stuff. It's more important. Definitely helped me in terms of preventing burnout. The nature of the role that I play with Dan, knowing what I'm going to be doing every day, not guessing, really just being who I am on air, really prevented the burnout. And I'm not saying that, you don't want to recharge the batteries or maybe look to do something different or new
Sure.
down the road. Of course you do. But I will tell you that for a good 20 years, what came before even, and there's no regret with this, it's the way you have to build. And my wife bought in because she saw where we were going. And she knew that I was happy and I was living my dreams out professionally. But so she was good, but it's very taxing.
Of course.
On the family. And I will tell you that for 20 years, that show came first. Like, it didn't matter what I was doing. If they needed me, I would drop what I was doing from a family standpoint and I would have to go address the show. But that's just the way this industry is, especially if you want to make it, have the success and longevity that we've had. I will tell you that now that I've arrived here where I've arrived and I've been here for a bit, the next phase of this, because my kids are going to college and my wife now needs her husband. Okay. I mean, the next phase of this, whether it's with Dan, and I'm not saying that it won't be, or whether it's something new down the road, they will come first. Like, period, end of this. They put up with me for 20 years, and now it's time to put them first. So whatever it is I do here moving forward, even if it is staying with Dan, but having to do the shows from different places, whatever it is, the need of my wife and the need of my children who are now going to be in college, and my desire to want to see my daughter play the highest level of her sport, which is college.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Fantastic.
It's awesome. We're being there for my other daughter, Emma, at who's going to be going to Syracuse. That stuff moving forward now has to and will take priority over anything to do with the show in the industry, just because they've always allowed me to make the show the priority, and now it's time to kind of pay them back and be there for my wife at a time where she really needs me. She's kind of defined by her children. Her children are going off to college, and it's that, I feel bad for Abby, but she needs Stugotz, and Stugotz plans on being there for my wife. Okay?
Oh God, what a perfect way to put it. I know you've been excited for this one. I texted you this because I didn't want to throw you on the spot, because I've done this with a couple of people with the Mount Rushmore thing. And they're like, "Oh, you got to give me more time, Steven." And I said, all right, I'm going to give you more time.
I've been agonizing. I'm telling you right now, I've been agonizing over this since you sent me the text.
Mount Rushmore of South Florida broadcasters. It could be radio hosts. It could be play-by-play. Give me Stugotz's Mount Rushmore of South Florida broadcasters.
All right. I am only going to give you radio hosts, dude. Like, I'm not going to do play-by-play. Although Jim Mandich should probably. Zaslow's had him on his list too. Zaslow's not on my list.
No, I know. He had Mandich on his list, though.
I know. I'm teasing. One day, though, Zaslow will be on someone's list. I promise you. He might be on my list one day. I love Zaz. He put Mad Dog on his list, huh?
Mm-hmm.
The respect we all have for Jim Mandich is like, it's crazy. All right, I got to start with Hank. Okay, Hank Goldberg is on that list. Listen, I'm not going to put myself on there. I'm not putting Levitard. We're not on Mount Rushmores yet. Okay, like then I'll really start feeling old. Okay. I'm not going to put Hockman on that list, although he's old enough to be on that list. So I'm going to say Hank, because Hank was the first big show down here.
Hank's got to be on there.
Yeah, Hank's on there. It doesn't have to be sports, right?
No, just broadcasters.
I think anyone who puts together, who's my age, a Mount Rushmore of South Florida radio personalities that doesn't have Neil Rogers on it is making a colossal mistake. Neil, for my money, might be the greatest to ever have done this, period. Just talk show, just the best. Like, and so for me at the time, Hank's show came right after Neil's show. It was the morning show, midday, afternoon. And so it was Neil 10 to 2, Hank 2 to 6. When George Rodriguez was out, I had the pleasure of being able to produce Neil's show. So I saw the genius like right in front of me, like just having conversations with himself and different characters. Amazing. So let's go. Neil, he's the greatest. Neil, Hank, the god of late night talk radio, Ed Kaplan. I love him. He's so ahead of his time. Gambling. Dan and I talking about him all the time. Like, he was so ahead. Ed Kaplan back then is where we're at now in terms of talking about gambling, breaking. Like, he was great, and he was perfect for night.
Little pioneer. All right.
Yeah, pioneer. And the last one, listen, there's no way we start $7.90 the ticket without him. And he's still doing it now, and he's still doing it at a fairly high level. But if you're not putting Joe Rose on that list, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
So I'm going Big Dog. I'm going Neil. I'm going Hank. I'm going Ed Kaplan.
Fantastic.
And my apologies to Ken Malden, who's the greatest update anchor I've ever heard. So And Phil Shane too, both legends. I mean, and Vandich. I mean, those are the three people I have some major regret leaving off this list. So,
John, I can't.
Defoe.
I can't thank you enough for joining me. This was a fantastic spot. Man. Keep up the great work. It was great meeting you. And thank you again for carving out some time for me.
All right. And this is how much Russo has influenced us. The reason Steven says spot, the reason I'll say, hey, great spot, is only because we heard Christopher Mando say it 1,000 times. Right?
Great spot. Great spot.
Great spot, Mike. Mike, what a great spot that was, Mike. I mean, yeah, Bobby V, Mike, after a big playoff game, what a great spot.
Perfect way to end it.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate this.
Of course, man. Thank you again. All right.